Hi everyone, kia ora. So I'm at the amazing Voices of Sacred Earth Festival in Kawai Purapura with the great Gary Cook, who is an elder and wisdom keeper of the sacred land and the sacred Ngahere that we're sitting in at the moment. Welcome, Gary.
Oh, thank you so much. What an incredible welcome, and what a background welcome we have. The throbbing of drums and people enjoying themselves and dancing, and we just walk through the people coming out of the sweat lodge, and there's so much going on here this weekend, and I'm just so honoured to be sitting here with you and to perhaps answer a few questions. I hope the questions are not too awkward because you know, I'm a very simple person, so
I think we'll keep it nice and simple. I really just want to communicate to the spirit of what you work with in the forest, because it's just so beautiful and enlightening and inspiring to me, and I would really love to share that with other people to some extent. Gary, we're sitting underneath a beautiful peace tree it's just off the Auckland motorway in a place called Kawai Purapura, but you'd think that you were in an oasis of time, really, because it's 19 acres of beautiful native bushland, and in the centre of it just about sits this huge kahikatea, is it, tree?
yes, beautiful kahikatea. Gosh knows what age it is, but looking at it, one could say it's probably 500 to 600 years old. So it's just an honour to be sitting in the presence of this beautiful, beautiful tree, so aptly named the peace tree.
The peace tree. And I love how it has smaller trees, notably from where I can see kawakawa just growing in the sheltered edges of its roots.
I know, and this just displays a little of the symbiotic relationship in a forest. How all forest trees get on with each other. Different species relate to different species. It's like one big homogeneous family, and there's nothing like race or creed or breed comes into it. They just work and live together and flourish together and support each other at so many levels.
Oh, that's such a beautiful understanding, and I think that works for the forest, the great forest of humanity too. At least that's how it should work.
That's exactly right, and it does work that way because, I mean, if we listen to the news, which pours in sort of through all sorts of mediums every day, and we buy into what they're telling us is going on around the world, they've dashed it all. They've got it pretty wrong. There's so much good stuff going on. There's so many good people doing good things. And I always say that this is really helping to keep the balance. You know, I think the affairs of the world are just like a great big pendulum swinging backwards and forwards. Sometimes the pendulum arcs out to extremity, which can be quite, sort of noticeable to people. But there is that the balance in between those swings, where the pendulum is just nice and still and just fluctuates a bit. And this is where we, what we're doing here with talking to people like you, coming to events like we're at Kawai Purapura, spreading the aroha and the love, and particularly we're able to sit in a forest. And when we're sitting talking like this and beside this beautiful tree, our very words that we're sharing now are going up through the tree, right up to the crown, right out into the cosmos. And so expressions of love and understanding and forgiveness will be broadcast freely through the trees in the forest.
Thank you for that, Gary. I just almost have no words there. I just felt that rise up through my heart and blow my mind, like the tree you were just talking about. It's just such a beautiful understanding. Thank you. So Gary, for those of you who don't know him, he is, as I said, a cultural wisdom keeper. He holds and inspires deep understanding of the world around us, as you can tell, especially the wisdoms of the forest as an intelligent living being, which of course Indigenous peoples all over the world have recognised forever. Gary holds an honorary doctorate of science. He is an author and has been producing the most beautiful music from the forest and his own garden, others' gardens and pot plants. He's got a gorgeous peace lily at home. Using technology and experimentation with that new technology, which allows us to hear the singing, the voices of the plants themselves. Can you tell us a bit more about the magic that you're bringing to us through science,
Wow.
Gary?
You know, I guess 50 years, 100 years ago, this would seem to be magic. But we are now living in the most incredible technological age. We've gone through the dark ages, we've gone through the age of iron and steam, we're now in the technological age. And as we embrace this technological age in the correct way, there are so many advancements with what scientists are sharing with us and showing us, which we can use as we're using this medium now, talking as you and I are to people out there in the wide world so easily. And with the technology comes so much research. There's so much research going on now all around the world into forests and trees for all sorts of reasons. But the consensus of so many researchers and scientists is the fact that, my gosh, we've really got to look at forests and trees in a totally different way. To the point where scientists are now saying we're going to have to recognize trees in the very near future as sentient beings, because there are not only the displays of community and getting on well in the forest scene, but also what the plants and trees bring to us. We all know the sort of mechanics, I suppose you call it, of photosynthesis, and the plants bringing in the carbon and the sunlight and converting it into plant sugars for themselves and looking after themselves, putting out the oxygen, but also there's all the food that they give us. And so technology has now brought me to the most incredible and exciting moment in my life where with technology I can put a couple of little gentle contacts on the leaves or the trunk of a tree, picking up the little electrical discharges, as you might call them, little static electricity, converting those with a few gentle wires back into a little electronic device, which when I look inside it I never want to dive in there again because it's so complex. I don't have to know how it works, I just know that it works. And then out the other end through my speaker comes the sound the tree makes. And so what we're able to do with this technology is give the trees and plants, the veggie plants in the garden, the pot plant at home in your lounge, the trees in the forest, give them a musical instrument to play. So this is another level of communication with trees, and it is something which can be shared with so many people. It's such an audio experience which leads to a deeper experience. It's real.
And I've seen it connect with so many people, even just with a slightly better understanding of how it works, which is what you've just given us, the light that just shines from people's eyes and hearts, knowing what they're hearing and knowing what they're listening to. It's just absolutely incredible, and it's another way of connecting us to, like you say.
This is right, and a lot of people will say to me after they've listened to a plant sing and say, wow, I've got to go and reconnect with nature. And I say, oh, hold on. You've actually never been disconnected.
Yeah.
You know, we are part of nature. We're connected all the time.
It's
just that we've forgotten.
Remember.
We have to remember. It's a time to remember. And also a little phrase I put out to people early on this year, to use your imagination, become an Imaginarian, and open up that imagination which has been sitting there subdued or suppressed since your childhood days. Just reopen that doorway to imagination.
Let's all be Imaginarians.
And then you can say, wow, you can fly with all of this, and the wonders of the modern technology being used for the benefit of humankind in a deeper, more spiritual way.
And along with all these beautiful, deep understandings, one thing that I really love about you, Gary, that just shines is your inner child, just that joy that you find within your work and within the natural world and within life. That spring in your step as we were arriving here, dancing along the grass, and just finding that stillness and that deep reverence that so many of us are missing. And I think we could all benefit from a little bit of what you access so readily, and
that's right, and that's still retaining a sense of adventure
yeah. And play,
and still allowing, we've all got a creative aspect, and sometimes we just don't bring this out. We just don't do it. It may be we just sit and listen to music, as I have been over the last couple of days. I'm not a musician, I don't play any instruments, but when I'm sitting listening to the rhythms being created, my feet are tapping and my fingers are dancing over the table and I'm drumming, so you just let yourself go and be free. It's as long as you don't do all these sort of things, sort of on the bus on the way to work, because people may look sideways at you. But other than that, and also just going to work, we're driving, we're with the nature the whole time. And there is such a thing, a phrase which has been coined by scientists. It's called plant blindness. And trees and forests and a lot of plants in our gardens, we just take for granted just being there. They're part of the background. We're in the foreground, and so is every other activity. So are all our household pets and the pet canary. But the trees and the gardens are always there, and they just go on constantly, rooted into one place, doing what they are meant to do, what they are ordained to do. As part, the biosphere of this planet, scientists have now told us that 99% of all life on the planet is plant life, for goodness sake, and all other life forms, including you and I, and every other life form, sits in 1%.
Just 1%.
1%. So, for heaven's sake, start to understand and realise that this is a plant planet. And as I was saying to people earlier on today, we have traces of plant DNA in our human DNA. So we're not that far separated. We don't have to reconnect because we're already connected. We just have to remember.
Thank you so much for that, Gary. Oh, well, you've answered so many of my other questions just within this heart-to-heart talk, and I think that's the way it should be. That's hopefully a really good format for an interview. I hope that you listeners have got a lot from that, because I certainly did, even in this space, learn more from Gary than I have in the past, and I've followed him for quite a while. He's a magical man, one of my personal inspirations. Today I wanted to talk about a little experiment that you did. Now, you say that this device that you've got, you use a device called the MIDI Sprout?
MIDI Sprout, that's right, yes.
Oh, good. So you've been experimenting with finding songs from the interaction with this device, with things other than plants, such as spring water.
That's right, such as spring water at home. It's interesting, and how this came about. About 18 months ago, I had a beautiful Māori kaumātua come to visit me on 2 occasions from the Tūhoi people, and he was listening to music playing on a lovely kawa tree I have near my back door, and he was enamored with this. He went away for a week, and then he came back once again on his journey back home, and he said, "I've got something to share with you." He said, "Recording the plants is just opening up so much." He said, "But you've got to record water." And I thought, water? How's this possible? We all know that we can go and sit by a stream and we can record the water rippling and tinkling over the rocks and around the little logs and things, making all the beautiful water noises we love. But what he was getting at, he could see that the energy in the plant, which was generating the plant song and the kawa, the energy in the water could also produce a song. I thought, wow. So I didn't do this for a long time. I thought, no, that's not where I am. I'm not at that. But then one day came the time. I was down by the little fairy springs at home there, had the MIDI Sprout out, put the two contacts underwater, in the water, under the water, fired it up, and then lo and behold, I had this beautiful music coming out. I just stood there transfixed. I thought, my gosh, what did he know that I didn't? And why was I sort of being so blind to this possibility? So, on a couple of occasions I have recorded the spring at home. I haven't taken this any further, except I have two amazing Pouanamu greenstone boulders at home, and I have connected also to the Pouanamu, the greenstone, and I have a song now from the Stone of Peace, which is another realm. And in a way, I'm sort of so taken aback by what's going on here. I even step back from this and I sort of say, in its time, but today at Kawai Purapura,
which I was lucky enough to be a witness to.
You sat in the circle.
I did, on the second round.
I know, you were busy filming. When I finished a creative visualization with people today on the music of a beautiful young rimu tree there in the forest, I said, would you mind sitting in a big circle and we'd all hold hands? So we had about 30 odd people there. And I connected them to this midi sprout. And we held hands all the way around. And by Joves, the impact of holding hands, letting go, crossing hands. So there were two people within the circle. They held a little contact or electrode each. So this device was subtle enough to pick up the energy within us as human beings, which, after all, is probably not dissimilar to what's going on in the plants. So there we recorded something which I think is just, I don't know where it's going to go. This is mind-boggling. So I'm dying to see the little film clip that you filmed whilst I wasn't looking.
I'll send it through to you.
I'd love to see it.
As soon as I can. Oh, that's amazing, Gary. I just, again, so blessed that you've taken the time to sit with me under this peace tree today in the forest and in the Ngahere of Kawai Purapura in Albany, Auckland. I just wanted to ask, to close off here before we say our goodbyes, what message, now this might put you on the spot a little bit, but what message do you think that the Ngahere, the living forest, might have for our listeners if it could speak through you today?
I guess if the forest spoke through me, I'd have to look at the message coming from the trees, through the tree and plant elementals, and coming through the Patapaerehi, through the fairy folk. This is the way that I can gauge, in general terms, the condition and the feeling of a forest. I don't see these little forest dwellers, but they are here, and I hear them. I'll hear their song, I'll hear their joy. And from this, when you hear them laughing and singing, close up or at a distance, you know that things are in balance. Things are wonderful. But I still have a feeling, though, that with these communications from these little beings on behalf of the forests, is that we still have to take more care. We have to have a better understanding of the trees. And as our conversation has developed today, we can see where we're both at and where we're sitting here. The trees are speaking to us. We have but to listen, and we have to take the time when we walk in the forest in the Ngahere, or through the park down the road in the corner of where we live in the city, or even if we're in our garden and the trees and shrubs. If we don't have a garden, we're living in a city apartment. We may have potted plants. We may have a little herb garden out on the landing, 10 stories, 20 stories up. These are how you can keep this communication, keep these lines of communication open with the Ngahere. All the little plants that we have in our gardens and in our lounges are connected with all the bigger plants and all the trees out there. It's one incredible connection. And as we are sitting here now and talking about this, my gosh, electronically this is being connected, but it's what we're talking about is already gone. It's out there in the cosmos, because we're sitting in the wood wide web.
I love that term, the wood wide web.
and out it goes. So when we enter the forest and when we address a tree and talk and acknowledgement is all that's needed. Even if we're going to work in the bus and we look out the window and we're stopped at the traffic lights and there's a tree growing there and the grass berm on the side, say hello to it. It'll know. Because even walking on the grass on a sunny day, the shadow that we cast on the grass, that grass is forever changed. It knows that something has gone by and something happened in their lives which hasn't happened before. So the effect we have within nature is so finite that we can sometimes overlook it. Okay, my love.
Thank you so much, Gary. There's so many more questions that I would love to ask you, and that I probably will off recording, but our time is pretty much up for today. If you'd like to follow Gary, you can find him on Facebook, and you can find him on the World Wide Web, and probably if you open your heart you might even catch a little feeling of him next time you walk through the forest. You never know. Gary's music recordings, his plant recordings of the Ngahere, of the trees and of the plants he's developed special relationships with at home, will be, thankfully, Gary, thank you for allowing us to use them, available as part of our Mindful Minute segment and through the Heartful Addiction podcast. So very blessed to be able to share that with you. And Gary does have these recordings for sale also on his website, but that's not what we're about today. But I just wanted to put that little note in there for those of you who might be interested in looking further. So thank you, Gary, and much love from me to you.
Okay.
And from all of us for your time here.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia kaha. Kia kaha.